Hello, dear souls. I want to share with you today why I don't think that self-criticism is a virtue. Oftentimes we think when we reflect on ourselves or we become more aware of ourselves that we are more spiritually advanced or personally advanced if we discover what we're doing wrong and if we criticize ourselves for that. We may not even call it that, but this is what's happening a lot. We're criticizing ourselves, we are putting ourselves down, we're noticing what we, in essence, it's like we're noticing what we don't like about how we said something, what we said, what we did, our attitude, our emotions maybe, our approach, and then we judge it as in it wasn't loving enough, it wasn't kind enough, it wasn't patient enough, it wasn't generous enough. And with that judgment and that self-criticism often comes the feeling of guilt, and a cycle then starts, which is a cycle of us moving ourselves away from our essence, from our broader consciousness state. Because what happens is when we judge ourselves and when we criticize ourselves is we cause a separation, a division between the wanted and the unwanted, and between us and what we devalue in us and put down, and the kind of aspired us and who we want to be and how we want to be. And that creates a separation and a division, which is artificial, it's an illusion, but it's something that we experience then, as in we feel we're more removed and further away from source, from our essence. Because that's what we're creating. Because the place from which self-criticism comes from is not soul level, is not divinity. It is person-centered. It is identity-bound. It is ego-bound. That's the place where the criticism comes from. It's the ego criticizing the ego, or the criticizing the behavior and the person, you. And so if the criticism is not coming from a divine place, what's the point? It only anchors you back in your 3D person identity, right? It narrows your consciousness. It narrows your perspective of who you are. It does not help you grow. It does the opposite. Because it is not coming from a perspective of broader consciousness. So, how do we resolve this? We resolve it by remembering when we notice something within ourselves that normally we would have criticized, right? Because we're aware people, we observe ourselves, we want to be better, we want to be more in our essence, right? So when we notice that there is something that we've just said or done that we did not like, that we did not appreciate, that we would have wished we would have done differently or better, okay? Then instead of criticizing and judging it, remind yourself that if you start the whole criticism thing, you're still in the ego. You're just moving and circling around yourself in the ego spiral. So come out of it. And instead of aspiring to go to a higher place consciously, to go to a more, what's the word? Like developed or heightened state of consciousness. Move into that space where you are now, not trying to get there, but move into it. And from that perspective, look at what you just said or did. Okay? Which means move on to your soul level, onto your spirit level, your pure spirit. Identify yourself with that nuance of yourself. I am pure spirit. I'm pure spirit. As pure spirit, I see what the identified me just did or said, right? And still it's a separation that we oftentimes still have within our concepts. It is still all just one. But we perceive it as separate. Our ego or identity, like me as Mel, I did this. But my soul, like on soul level, I can look from soul level onto what I as a person did and then have a certain perspective on it. And that perspective has to be more in alignment with who and what you are. Because that's where you started off, why you criticize yourself in the first place, okay? So move into that space of who and what you are, from which you look at your actions. And who and what you are as pure spirit is unconditional. Right? You are unconditional love in your essence. And the reason why even certain actions or words or emotions feel off is because they're not in alignment with your true essence. They're not unconditional love. They're not unconditional patience, unconditional understanding. They're very conditional. So once you notice you've done or said something you're not happy with, look at it from soul level, from source level. And source is always accepting, unconditionally. So then give yourself the unconditional regard and kindness and love and understanding. Like you understand yourself, why you did that. You may not be happy with it, but you understand it. You had your reasons. And they might be low motives, right? Self-centered motives. But it is understandable, and Source understands it, and so does your soul, so does your higher self. You're understood, and you are loved and accepted unconditionally. So the more you embody that unconditional acceptance for yourself, the more you move into alignment, and the less relevant the criticism becomes, and the more you will also just uncover it for what it is. It's an ego pattern. It's an ego pattern. It's not divine. It's not soul level. The soul does not criticize. The soul does not judge. Because in every criticism, yes, you want to be better, and this is why you notice what you didn't like about what you just did or said. But every criticism is judgment. And one thing we're not in our true essence, and one thing the universe is not, is judgmental. So whenever we come into judgment, it's duality and it's 3D. It's not divine. It's not our true self. So by actually just moving into the consciousness of our true self, we overcome the need to self-criticize in order to become better, to move into our true self, into our essence, into more divinity. I hope I expressed this clearly and logically, and that this makes sense for you, and I hope that this is helpful. And for today, I'm going to love you and leave you, and we'll talk again next time.